Stoicism is not stuffing your emotions down into a dark place and pretending they don't exist. And frankly, that's a recipe for just ending up in therapy or worse, way down the road. The first time I went to therapy, I was in college. I was going through this terrible breakup and I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I just felt horrible all the time. I had no experience with these things. I didn't have anyone I could talk to. And I remember I went to therapy at the sort of campus medical center, and it was a total eye-opener for me. It started me down a path that's, when I worked in Hollywood, I had a therapist in Beverly Hills. I had a different one in the Hollywood Hills when I moved to the east side of LA. I had one when I lived in New Orleans writing Trust Me, I'm Lying. I was going through all sorts of stuff in my relationship then, also the fear of quitting my job. I had one when I first moved, and then I didn't quite like that one. Got a different one in New Orleans who I kept, and I would do phone appointments when I moved to Austin. And then my wife and I have gone to couples counseling. I go to a therapist now for some family stuff I'm dealing with. Like, the idea of sitting down and talking through these things with someone is really important, especially like look, obviously I know my Stoic philosophy, but what we're all struggling with is not just how to apply these things in the difficulties of and the vagaries of actual life, but we're also trying to just deal with our own shit, right? We all have scripts from our childhood. Ramit Sethi talks about money scripts. Like, we've picked up ideas about money from childhood. Or, we've picked up scripts about relationships, how men and women are supposed to interact. The Stoics are really vague. I mean, what I love about the Stoics is how vague they are. Marcus Aurelius's advice in the middle of a plague works today in the middle of a pandemic, but it also works for all time, whoever you are. Like, the idea that the self-talk of an emperor could be valid or relatable to a college student is crazy, but that's the brilliance of Marcus's writing. But what we're not getting is like really specific advice. And I find that therapists are a great way to do that. And as it happens, Stoicism is intimately related to psychotherapy, specifically one form of it known as cognitive behavioral therapy. Donald Robertson, who I've had on the podcast, a great writer and thinker, has written for years about the philosophy of CBT, but also Albert Ellis, one of the pioneers of CBT, cites Epictetus, the idea of what's in our control, what's not in our control, but specifically the idea it's not things that upset us, it's our judgment about things. This is like a key component of a whole bunch of different forms of therapy. So the Stoics would not be opposed to these things at all. And in fact, I think they would say, if it works, do it. Remember, Seneca says, I'm not afraid to quote a bad author if the line is good. Meaning, I think even if there was somehow the tenets in this form of therapy or that form of therapy were anathema, totally opposed to Stoicism, like they hated it, the Stoics would still say, if it works for you, do it, man. If it makes you more Stoic, who cares what the source is, right? Seneca says we can get Stoic advice from Epictetus, so you can definitely get Stoicism advice from a doctor of psychology, right? We're all struggling, we're all doing the best we can, and sometimes we get into places where we need advice or we need to work through problems. And I've heard from so many therapists over the years who have assigned my different books or assigned the works of the Stoics to their patients who are struggling with this or that. I love hearing from people who are in recovery, because Ego is the Enemy is partly about some of my recovery. I have some issues with work addiction, and at a really low point in my life, I was sort of had this totally unhealthy relationship with work, and I ended up even going to Workaholics Anonymous. So there's nothing wrong with getting help. There's nothing wrong with exploring different schools of thinking. There's certainly nothing wrong with sharing problems that you have, being vulnerable. Brene Brown talks about daring greatly is really like about being vulnerable, the power of being vulnerable. And there is a part of Stoicism which I think people mistake with not being vulnerable, with not sharing, with not admitting weakness, with not admitting fear or doubt or pain. And that's not a way to be. Like, Stoicism is not stuffing your emotions down into a dark place and pretending they don't exist. And frankly, that's a recipe for just ending up in therapy or worse, way down the road. So you got to process this stuff. When Marcus Aurelius talks about being free of passion, but full of love, I don't think you just get there by reading books. This is an ongoing practice. This is a struggle. And taking an hour a week or 2 hours a week, or in targeted bursts with someone who can help you with your specific thing. Maybe you have a lot of anger about your childhood. Maybe you struggle with disordered eating or thinking. Maybe you feel really inadequate as a person. Maybe you're just stuck grieving someone. In fact, there's a couple different places in the Stoic writings. One of the letters, I think, from Epictetus, and then there's a letter from Seneca, where they're talking to someone who's just beset by grief, just absolutely wrecked by the loss, I think in both cases, of a father. And you can tell that these women in both cases are well past whatever the normal grief window is. They're just destroyed by it. And that happens, right? We have someone we love, we care about, we never wanted anything to happen to, and then it does happen. And we get stuck. We kind of get in these patterns that grief can almost be comforting. It's almost like an escape from reality. And so Seneca and Epictetus are writing these letters, but these are also prime candidates. This letter, as wise as it is to us now, is not magically going to solve this poor woman's problem who's mourning a son or a father. What they need is some grief counseling, right? So I think it's just important that we don't conflate sort of lowercase stoicism, which is this invulnerability, this absence of emotion, this unfeelingness, this I'll do it on my own, I'm a robot. We don't conflate that definition with Stoicism with Stoicism, the philosophy, which is a way of living, a way of thinking, a way of being, but it's also a philosophy. I don't want to say it's an incomplete philosophy, but I would say Stoicism is incomplete if you're not availing yourself of the many other tools out there, whether that's cognitive behavioral therapy or Freudian therapy. I don't care what you use. But if you're struggling with something, if you need help, go get it. You deserve it. I don't want you to think that Stoicism is the end-all be-all. And it hasn't been for me. I've been studying this philosophy 15 years now, but almost every step of the way, it's been with the help of the therapists who have been really good for me. And my life wouldn't be what it is without having had those conversations. And if anything, they've only helped my study of Stoicism because I'm able to take what I understood in theory and get a better approach to applying it, not just practically, but also realistically. And sometimes it can be that because of our issues or our biases, we've completely interpreted something that Marcus Aurelius or Seneca is saying in a twisted, kind of messed up way. And to do that is to pervert the philosophy. And so having an outside person, having someone with training in this who's seen people in your situation a million times, I think that's another really Stoic idea is James Baldwin talked about this. He goes you think your problems are so unique and special that your pain is the most unique pain in the world. And he says, and then you read books and you realize that's not true. One of the things I think you realize about therapy is you're so ashamed of your issues. This is my thing with my parents. This is, my embarrassing quirk or flaw or whatever it is. And then you talk to a therapist and you're like, this is the most normal thing in the world. They see people in and out of this office every single day with this exact same thing, that all couples fight this way or that way, or that all people struggle with this doubt or this fear or this pain. And so you realize you're not unique. And there's a time when Marcus Aurelius is talking about zooming out, he's the humanity is the same thing happening over and over and over and over again. And that it's people, quibbling over this and that, wasting their life doing so. You realize that there's a sense of that in therapy as you work through these issues, just how timeless they are, how much they connected you to other people. A Stoic is not invulnerable. And if a Stoic needs help, a Stoic should not feel bad asking for help. In fact, the courageous thing to do, the right thing to do, is to ask for help, is to work on yourself. Epictetus quoting Socrates says, like, some people delight in improving their farm or their business. I delight in improving myself. If you're not going to invest some time and energy in working on your shit, what are you doing, right? And if you're not going to do it for you, do it for your kids, do it for your spouse, do it for the person who's standing in line next to you at the store. The world would be better if people looked inwards, dealt with their shit. They didn't just try to grit their teeth and bear it. And I think there's nothing more stoic than rolling up your sleeves, working on your issues. If that's with therapy, if that's with reading books written by therapists, I don't care, but just do something. And don't feel bad about it. In fact, you should wear it like a badge of pride. And that's why I wanted to make this video. I feel no shame or awkwardness saying that I've been to a couples counselor, that I've been to multiple therapists, that it's something I'm working on, that I'm still doing it because I'm still having problems. I feel no shame in that. In fact, I'm proud of it. And I'm going to keep going, and it's going to keep making me better. And I'm going to reap the rewards of that just like you will. For the Stoics, wisdom was an ongoing process. It was a journey. Zeno said that well-being is realized by small steps, but it's no small thing. So how do we do that? Well, I suggest the Daily Stoic email. You can sign up at dailystoic.com/email. One email every single day, totally free. The best wisdom and insights from the Stoics, from Zeno to Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca. Sign up, start your journey. Let me know what you think.